It looks like we are now live. Good evening, or not good evening, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for joining us and welcome to our emergency meeting on December 3rd, 2020. We will begin with flag salute. Please join me by standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I think our first order of business is, I need to figure out how to change my screen so I can see my agenda. We need to first vote on this being an emergency meeting.
And if I can just give a little bit of context for those who are watching, we knew that the governor was going to issue have a press release or a conference in the last couple of days. We weren't sure when and what he would say. And so we've been, for the last couple of days, trying to play a game of having our meeting after we have his information and then provide as much notice as we could to the community. So this emergency meeting was scheduled in response this morning as soon as we knew when the governor's news conference would be today. It started at 12:30, so we're pretty close.
Yeah, we didn't get we got our message out after he pushed his back a little bit.
I'll move to have an emergency meeting, if that's the first step.
That's the first step. Thank you, Jane. All in favor, Thane?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And Shelley, aye. So that passes unanimously. And the next thing we need to do is approve the agenda for today. So if there's a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jane. All in favor, Thane?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And Shelley, aye. So the agenda passes also. I believe there is one public comment that I saw come through.
We actually have two public comments that have come through. And I would say in our previous meeting, we had not been accepting comments through the meeting because it's hard to monitor. But in this particular case, knowing that we had such short notice because of the timing, we're allowing public comments through the course of the meeting just because we didn't have very much advance notice. So the first one is from Stephen Weed. And it says, "These are the times that try men's, women's souls. Thank you for allowing comments as you legally must. However, your decisions will be biased on the decisions or on the decades of your collective experience. Novel, believe." And then we have one that just came in.
I think that was a typo. Your decision will be based on your years of experience.
Yes, I read it as it was written, but I probably did say that. The other one that we just received is from Richard Bird. "In light of the current surge in COVID numbers and with yesterday's increase being the largest daily increase of positive cases, I feel that we should return to distance learning until we begin to see the numbers decrease." Richard is a teacher in the district. So those are our two at this time.
Thank you. And so we move to the reason that we're here is the discussion of the governor's announcement of the shut-in orders for our area and where we're at with OHI.
And Shelley, we typically on the agenda have a time for OFT and CSEA to comment. And this particular one, I think it was an oversight that we didn't include that. Would it be possible for us to ask if either of them have public comments before we go into the presentation?
It could be in the public comment section, yeah.
I would prefer to hear from them if others don't mind until we get a little background for those who might be watching.
Okay.
What the governor had to say. Would that be okay?
So you're asking for their comment after we discuss the governor's comments? Is that what you're saying?
Well, at least hear a little bit about the governor's comments.
Okay.
Maybe not before our discussion, but at least a little prep.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and I have a presentation that is partially based on what we thought the governor's comments were going to be, and then partially just based on the work that we have been doing. So this is just an update as of today. And I wanted to share with you some recent changes. I don't have what the governor said today, although I can share with you broadly that there is a stay-at-home order for counties in which hospitalizations are more than 15%. Ventura County is not currently in that category, although our rates have been going up, and I'll show you in the data in just the most recent data in just a moment. And I anticipate that we will have a meeting with Ventura County Public Health and the superintendents probably tomorrow, because there's the governor's orders, and then there's Ventura County Public Health and the decisions that they make. So I'll give you an example. The CDC just recently changed the quarantine requirements from 14 days to 7 and 10 days, depending on if you get a test. But Ventura County Public Health still has a 14-day quarantine requirement. So we are obligated to follow Ventura County Public Health guidelines, not the CDC guidelines that were just released, unless Ventura County Public Health changes their guidelines. So sometimes there's a little bit of a discrepancy between the statewide requirements and what we are doing locally. So obviously the governor's announcement was, just half an hour ago. So we have not yet heard from Ventura County Public Health. However, this is what we do know, that COVID cases in Ventura County are continuing to increase. And as such, Ventura County Public Health stopped accepting waivers for elementary schools to open. So if you remember, when we moved from the red to the purple tier, in the purple tier, schools that have not opened cannot open unless you submitted a waiver. We were accepting waivers for about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, and then Ventura County Public Health said, we're not even accepting any waivers for new schools to open at all. So if you had not previously had your waiver in, then you're not eligible at this point, which says to us that public health is concerned about elementary schools at this time. Cases in Ojai and Oakview continue to increase. When we discussed before Thanksgiving break with our leadership team and with OFT, if we were going to delay returning in person in the hybrid model after Thanksgiving, there were some concerns about travel. We decided at that time not to do that for a variety of reasons, because Ojai at that time and Oakview at that time were both in the yellow lowest tier, and I'll show you that in just a moment. And we had agreed within our team that if Ojai were to move into the purple tier, that we would make recommendations to return to distance learning. Additionally, COVID exposures and quarantining due to Thanksgiving travel are increasing daily in our schools. So I work closely with Haley Hernandez, who is our district nurse, and we talk many times a day. We have some positive cases in our schools right now of students who are quarantining. And then we have a number of people who were exposed due to Thanksgiving travel, who are confirmed exposures, who are also quarantining. So I think right now we have 3 people who are positive, some people who are waiting on test results, and about 10 people that are quarantining based on potential exposures. We also continue to receive daily concerns from our elementary teachers. So I have been receiving them every day from teachers who are just concerned about holiday travel, concerned about the rising cases, who were willing to come back to school when it was safe, but feel like the conditions have changed and would like us to make considerations based on what they feel are changing safety conditions for them to be at school right now. Here are, and I'm sorry this is always small, I made it as big as I could. So on the left-hand side right here, you can see these are our cases from November 7th. So this is the data that we were using right before Thanksgiving. And you can see that Oakview was in the yellow tier. And the way to read this chart is this these two boxes here. This is the week before, and this is the current week. So there's 2 weeks of data on this side and then 2 weeks of data here. And this first 2 columns are showing you the 7-day average case rate. And then on the right, the 7-day average positivity rate. So you can see that Ojai was in the yellow and the orange on those metrics at the beginning of November, about a month ago. The most recent data that we have ending November 21st, so this is still even before Thanksgiving break, you can see that Ojai on this metric here, it has 2 weeks of data that is in the purple. I'm sorry, Oakview has 2 weeks of data in the purple. Ojai has 1 week of data in the purple. And then on the 7-day positivity rate, orange and red. So we are in orange and purple, which is not great and definitely a significant change from where we were just a couple of weeks before that. So I get this data every week on Tuesday. So next week's data will reflect what happened over Thanksgiving. I would also say one of the things that is a little bit problematic for us is that it is much harder now to get tested than it was previously. So if we have people who have been exposed, we would recommend that they go and get a test. I know many people who tried to get tested in Ojai on Monday and weren't able to because the lines were long, they closed, etc. And people who are traveling down to Ventura have significantly long waits. And so for our families who might have a concern, we recommend that they go and get tested. But if it's hard or difficult to do so, or they have to take time off of work in order to do that, and maybe they think they're going to go on their lunch break, but then it's taking 3 or 4 hours, it becomes problematic. And there's a concern that I have that we may not be getting as reliable data from testing as we would like, because it's just a little bit backed up right now. So our proposal right now before you today is to return to distance learning through January 3rd at the elementary school. So this is 2 weeks of it, 2 weeks. For any student, it's really who's attending live in person right now, it's really 4 days because they attend twice a week. So it's 2 days next week and 2 days the following week. So a total of 4 days that they would miss in-person instruction. The other thing that is happening right now is because we have quarantines and people are just concerned, we have very low attendance in many of our classes. We have a couple of classes that have like 3 students attending in person. So for our teachers, they're putting a lot of time and effort into those 3 students, and that takes away the time and effort for them to be able to provide to their students who are in distance learning. So as we have more students who are naturally, and families who are naturally choosing distance learning, it to me makes sense for us to transition our time and effort more towards them.
Can I just interrupt really fast there, Tiffany? I just want to make the point that I appreciate your point that it takes teachers time away from the kids who aren't in class and the disparity there, and that this is not a decision based on ADA, because we are not basing our income to the school district on ADA. So this is not a monetary decision. It's truly an educational decision.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. ADA is not in play this year for us. So we would also evaluate a return to campus in the hybrid model in late December. So it is December 3rd. So it's a little bit hard to make a decision for a month from now when, things are changing really rapidly. At the end of the governor's press conference, he was just talking about vaccines and how those are expected to be deployed fairly quickly. Also, the rates may decline. So I think that we would make a decision closer to that January 3rd date about what January looks like. We would like to keep our ABC clubs open. So that's how we began the school year, where we have an on-campus option for our youngest learners, TK through first grade. Right now, students go every other day. If they're in the ABC club, we would return to being able for them to go every day or 4 days a week while they participate in distance learning. At Chaparral, we would return to distance learning through January 3rd and then evaluate a return to campus model, hybrid model in late December in the same way. So those are really our two programs that are affected. Everyone else will remain as is on distance learning.
How about Summit? Would they go back to distance, all distance, or?
Yeah, so Summit right now, most teachers are distance learning or they're individual. They're not meeting in a class. So for Summit, it'll probably be an individual schedule.
In person?
It will depend on if it's just one teacher and one student, it might be an individual schedule, or we might move all of that online. I think it'll depend on the needs of the families at that point.
When you were talking about the students who are quarantining, are some of those elementary students?
Yes.
Okay.
Before we get too far into discussions, we've gotten several public comments come in, and so I'm hoping we can read those and hear from our union presidents and then have board discussion.
So I will read those if you give me just 1 second to pull them up. So we have public comment from Lisa Patch, who is a 5th grade teacher at Miramani and has been there for 29 years. I hope that our elementary schools will remain open during this time. I feel that Catherine White works very hard to keep our schools safe, and as one with chronic asthma and compromised lungs, I feel safe. I feel I am more effective teaching my students in person. Thank you, Lisa Patch. And then we have Amy Mendoza. I teach at Miners Oaks School. My class had to be outside yesterday because I had a student coughing who then told me she was absent the previous day because he had a fever and a stomach ache. Extremely nerve-wracking. I feel not just worried about my personal health, but I am responsible for the safety of my families. This is not an isolated incident, and these situations are occurring all over the Valley. I love my job and I love seeing the students. However, I do not believe that this is a safe choice at this time. Before Thanksgiving, I had multiple students sharing their plans to travel and others describing how there was no way they could keep their gathering to 10 because their families were so huge. Only a few made the decision to self-quarantine. I expect the winter break to be the same. If we do not listen to science or the reports of emergency room crowding, that is a mistake. Please let the record show that our teachers, Miners Oaks, wrote a letter before Thanksgiving and asked the admin to consider returning to distance learning until well after the Christmas break. I know that the San Antonio teachers did the same. Sorry for the typos. I have a Zoom meeting now. Thank you, Amy Mendoza. We have one more from Kimmery Buckley. I'm against closing the elementary hybrid program. I feel it is extremely beneficial to our students. I teach at Miramani and I feel very safe. We have one more from Laura Wheeler. I am in favor of moving to full distance learning for elementary schools and all schools from now until mid-January, at least 2 weeks after New Year's. On Tuesday, I only had 2 students from my 2nd grade class at school due to both quarantine and concern about exposure at school. I do not feel like I was meeting the needs of the majority of my class. Today, one of my students who had previously told me about her travel plans for Thanksgiving came to school. Her mom sadly reported that they have not left Ojai at all, which I know is not accurate. I was not comfortable being in my classroom with her and did not want to risk exposure for me or my other students, so I taught outside all day. It was extremely challenging and not something I think teachers should have to deal with. I have other concerns, but I need to get to my class soon. Thank you for your consideration.
So I received an email, and I'm not really sure if it's a public comment or not. It sounds like it is, so I'm going to read it out, and I apologize if it's not. From Natalie Hay saying, I think we should be closed. We have almost no subs. There's heightened risk, and the quality of instruction, student learning, and supports are weaker and more scattered now compared to full-time Zoom days. Also, sadly enough, we know of some families that chose to travel and return to campus rather than quarantining over break. All this combined, it doesn't feel safe or worth the risk to remain open. It saddens me a great deal to feel this conflict, where no option is ideal, but to me, the security and consistency of the distance learning format at this time wins.
And I would just share that we have no legal ability to exclude a student from school at this point. There is a particular rule that allows us, I think is part of SB 98, that allows us to remove students from a classroom or from school if they're not wearing a mask. But if students choose not to quarantine, we don't have the legal right at this time to exclude them from coming to campus.
So I believe that's all the public comments, and I would like to hear now from our union presidents. Chuck, do you have any comments you would like to make on behalf of CSEA?
Thank you. I want to start out with a thank you. The fact that I work with this OHI group as we're standing here present, that we can gather this quickly, that we're this compassionate for all the needs, and to hear those comments. To make a Zoom meeting a public meeting has been quite a challenge, and I think that you've done that just by putting those comments in there, and I thank you, because this is a community event. CSEA has had the problem with the consistency of the information. As some of these comments were made, let's see. When parents are calling employees and saying something that has not yet been said on the district level, it causes a concern with the employees, and then it also causes concern with the family. I really want to acknowledge, and I always start by saying thank you to this group, because we are above and beyond what I've seen in other districts throughout this county. I've thanked Dr. Morse for the people approach of it. The bottom line with CSEA right now is people are not feeling confident. The fact that they can express themselves, as you've seen in these public comments, we have the tools here to do that. And I do believe that everybody is listening. But as classified members, we've had 3 MOUs with this district, and it's been well. It's been consistent. But in the last couple of weeks, between some of the cases that have been reported here, between the conversations between management, parents, and employees, it has not rested well, and confidence is low right now. Just to share that with you, I do appreciate everybody's efforts, and I think we're on the right path. But that is the general census of the membership. They're concerned, and their confidence is lacking. Thank you.
Chuck, can you speak more to what you mean by the confidence lacking, and what was respect?
So the use of Parent Square is an awesome communication tool. And Dr. Morris and HR, we've already had an arrangement where Dr. Morris communicates to the whole community through Parent Square. A lot of our employees are limited on their computers, and so HR has been duplicating that information through email to the classified employees. Lots of efforts being made this way, but when a parent calls an employee that has heard something from a specific event at a specific school, it causes a conflict as to, well, is it true? What's true? Is it a rumor? And I just say to people, there's things, one of the principals said it very well, those that need to know have been told. But when the parent gets in the middle of that and says, well, what's true, what's not true? Well, the employee is not informed to know what is or isn't. And so that's causing their doubt. And I understand we're not trying to start a rumor mill. We're trying to be accurate and efficient. But that experience has happened no less than twice in this last week. And I just acknowledge the efforts that we're doing here. But when the parents get involved and they hear something different from us and they're hearing from management, it's now everybody's on doubt. And so that's been my biggest thing, because what we've done here in OHI with all the tight budgets over the years is we've continued to have the confidence of this community. For example, the Measure K that just passed. People believe in what we're doing. And that's what I want to maintain. And so this last week has been painful when people have this conflict of communication. And was that me?
No, that's me. I'm at work.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All right. Did I clarify that for you, Kevin?
Yeah, somewhat. I think we sort of took it as far as we can in this particular forum. So thank you.
Thank you. And I too tried to restrain myself as to not too much. It is a public forum in there, but I think the gist of it is that confidence piece is just, it grows faster, or I say lack of confidence seems to grow faster than all the hard work that we've done. So thank you for allowing me to express that, because that's really where we seem to be.
Thank you, Chuck. Angie Janassi for OFT.
Hi. Yeah, I too would like to thank you for giving us a chance to speak. I was frantically sitting here trying to text a public comment, of which I'm not very good at doing. So thank you for this opportunity. Clearly, I can't speak for everyone because we've had several public comments in favor of staying in the in-person and hybrid model. But I will say without a doubt, the majority of the elementary teachers would like to go to distance learning up to winter break and then reassess at winter break. They are concerned about their health and safety of themselves, their families, the students. And that's not the only thing they're concerned about. Really, it's much like what Dr. Morse was saying, and that is there's a lot of concern about the educational soundness with what we're doing right now, because we have so few students in our class. So we are putting so much effort. Like I spend 4 hours each day with 5 kids, and I have 20 at home. And some teachers have 2 or 3 in their class. And we started out with 9 and 10, and it's just dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. And, you know, this is what we're here for. We're here to educate children. And I think we had a good start with distance learning at the beginning of the year, and people were feeling very confident with what was happening. And now that we're feeling, one, unsafe, and then also feeling like those 3 kids in my class are important, or they're important. We want to be there for them. But we really feel like the majority of the children should get our energy and time as well. And if everyone was going to distance learning, we could be doing that, and then again, honing those skills and getting better and better at that. So just to be clear, the majority of the elementary teachers would like to go to distance learning at least to winter break for both the safety and for the education of the kids.
Angie, can I ask you a question? I know when we went to the hybrid model, there was a lot of work on a daily schedule. And obviously before the school year started, there was a lot of work on a teacher schedule and the MOU for distance learning. So is there any concern among teachers if we chose to go back to distance learning, basically the weekend they have to prepare for that?
I think their safety is more important than their weekend. I will say that without a doubt. And to be honest, most weekends you're going to find teachers here anyway. So I do believe that teachers are already thinking, gosh, we need to go back to distance learning. And they are like, I've just put my packets together for next week, and I haven't separated them out yet because I've been looking at the numbers myself. I have been concerned. So I haven't set them up for my in-person yet, because I wanted to wait. So I think teachers, they'll do what they have to. They always do everybody does what they have to do to make it work, right, Jane? I mean, that's what people do. So yes, it means people will be scrambling, but I don't think it's going to be as much of a scramble as you're thinking, because everyone's watching what's going on. We're all concerned.
Thank you, Angie.
Shelley, we have one more public comment that just came in. This is from Teresa Lessing, who says, I feel like we need to close our hybrid instruction on a daily basis. I only have 3 to 4 students on campus. I don't feel like the majority of students' needs are being met. I'm very worried about the numbers rising dramatically in Ventura County.
I would like to say that last Monday, so right before Thanksgiving, I had just a gut feeling. I was going to call Tiffany and say, can Can we have an emergency meeting and not be in person next week? I was just watching the numbers and also hearing from people who were not changing their Thanksgiving plans and going to meet friends in the desert and, oh, it's just cousins, you know, and that was not what I was hearing from the CDC and from, you know, our health professionals. So that, you know, again, we don't even know the numbers yet for Thanksgiving, what was occurring during Thanksgiving. I also want to point out that from what I understood from the governors, the reason we're moving into this new stay-at-home order is because we have less than 15% capacity in our ICU units in our county. So that means, you know, let's
I
say
think we're
we have
projected.
well, I think there's only the Bay Area is the only area where currently, as of today, they have more than 15% of ICU beds open.
It was actually a little different than that. Nobody's yet in the 15% category. He expects all regions other than the Bay Area to hit it within the next few days, and he expects the Bay Area region to hit it within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I thought I saw yesterday that we were at 18% in Ventura County. So we're very close.
I would just say, Jane, we met as a leadership team, including OFT, right before Thanksgiving, and we had the same discussion. At that time, the numbers for Ojai were in, you know, the yellow. No other district was not returning in person. So every other school district that was open in the county was returned this week. And there are no cases of school-based transmission. So because schools have done such a good job of social distancing and masks and compliance and sanitization, thank you to our CSEA folks who are really making that happen. There have been positive cases on campus in Ventura County, but none of them have become a super spreader or spread to other people in those classrooms, because frankly, schools are you know, taking extraordinary precautions. And so based on that data at that time, we decided as a team to not recommend going to distance learning the week after Thanksgiving. And I would still say, even with people right now, because we have so few numbers on campus and teachers are moving their classes outside if they need to, I think that we are still in a place where we're safe, but I think instructionally it's problematic. I think every single day we're seeing an increase in the number of quarantines and exposure. So to what degree we can continue that safety, I'm not sure, but we did consider your question, Jane, at some point, and you know, had a really long, thoughtful, and I would say even our admin team was split on it, and then we talked about it and eventually came to consensus. But we did think about that, but I think what was true a week ago, this is the whole thing about this pandemic, is what was true a week ago is no longer true.
So a question I have, what strikes me about this conversation is really the focus on the educational foundation of what we're doing, and whether what we're doing is the best for all of our students, because there's so few in the classroom, and the teachers are wanting to meet the needs of those who are at home. And I'm curious as to what the numbers are, if we know how many students would be on campus through ABC Club, if we went that route, as opposed to how many are on campus now in the hybrid model. I guess what I'm saying is it almost sounds to me like we would have about the same number of students, but we would actually be educationally meeting their needs better in the hybrid, or not in the hybrid, in distance learning, because those kids who need to come to campus still are.
Potentially. It depends on the school. Miners Oaks has much more attendance right now than, for example, San Antonio. So, you know, each school is a little bit different, but we did talk a lot about in our meeting yesterday with admin about ABC clubs and the desire to keep them open to provide that stability for our youngest learners who struggle the most with distance learning. But remember, it's limited because it's only TK, K, and first grade.
Right.
We also would keep employee daycare open as well, as long as it was being utilized. So we currently offer employee daycare. So if teachers need to work from campus, they would still be able to work from campus, and we would provide a place for their own children to do their distance learning on campus.
My feeling is that our administration, our teachers, our staff, it seems have made every effort to bring students to school when it's been safe and practical. And if the recommendation is coming through at this point that it's not safe or practical for the next couple of weeks, I certainly support that recommendation.
I would agree, Thane, and I think it's, you know, looking at the long-term view of wanting to have safe ability to bring kids to school in January, taking precautions now makes sense so that that can happen in the future.
I have to agree. I would echo Thane's words. This district has tried to be up to that line, the balance between safety and efficacy and education, and we've moved with the numbers, and I think we have to continue to do that. I do not think that we have closed gratuitously, you know, because I think this district recognizes the burden on parents when the kids are not in school. Having parents among our family too. So I am confident that this administration is not closing any sooner than it has to, and for any longer than we feel is appropriate. But with the Thanksgiving spike still to be seen, and the Christmas holidays coming, I'm seeing it at the college, and I'm concerned about it here too. So I would support the administration's recommendation.
I think for me, the sort of, there's really not a decision to be made based on the information that some of the teachers have provided about, you know, teaching to 2 or 3 kids. You know, that is obviously only going to be exacerbated if we were to decide to stay in person, and then the governor's order kicks in the next few days with respect to the new restrictions, notwithstanding that it's not going to affect already open schools. Clearly some parents at that point would probably, I can only imagine, believe that the risks, you know, at that point might even warrant less kids coming in person. And then, you know, then you're looking at the broad question of how you deploy limited resources for the greatest good in our district. That's really got to be the question. So how do you efficiently educate the kids in our district under these circumstances? And at this point, it seems like the only, you know, way to do it in an organized way that assures the greatest good to the greatest number is through officially going back to remote. But the thing I do want to add is we haven't talked about it with respect to sports and things that are outdoors in the district. I know there may be some superseding legal requirements. Like I was just now trying to figure out what Newsom's saying about that. And it looks like they may be shutting down playgrounds and maybe even just live sports altogether. But depending on that, it still seems to me, just like as we allow up at Summit with the enrichment in person, that people who are in a position, whether they're part of a club, I'll say specifically me, I'm about to restart mock trial right now. And my first hope had been that we would have our first meeting this weekend outside in the grass, you know, with everyone spread out and at least saying hi to each other, et cetera. So, you know, we talked last week about this issue of, you know, if a coach or a leader wants to and has the ability to do it, and the kids want to and have the ability to do it, that if those two things can still come together around the district, it seems to me we should still make those things available. They may not be. I mean, there may be a legal restriction on it, but if they are available, I still think we should have the flexibility there, and I don't see any reason why we would want to stand in the way of that.
With regards to athletics, we're still working on what that looks like. We were waiting for the announcement, and obviously my focus was on the presentation I just gave you. So with athletics, we are going to check in and see what other districts are doing. We don't want to be the only district that is continuing to practice, and we don't want to be the only district that is not practicing. So we want to check in with our peers. One of the things that's been really interesting about athletics is, you know, when our coaches are a little bit anxious that we haven't had scrimmages or those kinds of things, the good news is that no one else in our league is doing that either, right? So we're trying to keep some kind of parity between other districts and other schools in our league, and to make sure that we're all more or less on the same page. So there's not one school that's, you know, out scrimmaging and playing live games and things like that, where another school is not even allowed in the weight room. We're trying to move somewhat together so that we can have the best, fairest return to play possible. So we're going to check in with everyone else, see what their plans are, and then make some decisions and send a specific email out to our athletes in the next 24 hours.
Is there, I have two things. One, in support of Kevin. I don't have an issue with being the only district who continues if we see that we are safe to do so, and if a leader wishes to do so. I do know that the CIF just released some new plans yesterday in terms of fall sports. There will be no championship games, no state games for those sports. So I didn't go any further than that, but there might be some new restrictions there. I would, you know, the interesting thing is last April, I said, please, let's not close for the end till the end of the school year. Let's just do this month. We're going to keep, all right. That was my big thing, was not to make too far a leap based on our fears. But I'm feeling, knowing today, we have not yet seen the numbers for Thanksgiving. I feel that we should close the next 2 weeks, but I also feel like we should distance learning that first week of January. I think families are still going to be gathering. They're going to be seeing, they're going to be traveling, and to have another 5-7 days of distance learning is, I don't know. I just think it's the smart thing to do.
So my thinking about that, Jane, is that if we announce in advance that we have 3 weeks, then families will travel for 3 weeks. Does that make sense? I feel like families will take the maximum amount of time possible. Whereas if we are able to kind of look, because again, it's still a month from now, towards the end of December, and see what our numbers look like. Because I feel like at some point we get into a loop where, you know, people potentially might take the entire time, no matter how much that time is.
Right. Plus, by then we might know more about the vaccines.
Right. That's kind of my thinking, is that I keep hearing vaccines are, you know, very, very close to being distributed. And so I think in the next month, we'll see significant changes potentially.
You haven't heard, I have not heard this, but I don't know if you have. So the governor says if we're already open, that doesn't, we could stay open. But if we go to distance learning, are we going to be allowed to go back into hybrid, even if the district is in purple?
Yes.
Or the county?
Yes, because we're not closing. We're continuing distance learning. So I don't think there's any anything legal that says that we would not be allowed to return.
And I took his words differently. And so I feel like I need to go back and listen, because I thought he said schools who had a waiver could stay open, and we don't actually have a waiver.
Right, but we had already opened, so that was there's a couple of different tiers that allow you to open.
Okay.
And I would say these are all decisions that come from local Ventura County Public Health rather than the governor's office anyway. So these are things that we would work with Dr. Levin and his team on.
So it sounds like there is consensus to, or maybe it's time to look for a motion to return to distance learning through December.
So this is an action item?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to return to distance learning for the next 2 weeks through the Christmas holiday, with hope to look at the possibility of some things remaining. Obviously, will remain the ABC Club, but also dealing individually with programs that might, like Kevin saying, sports or something like that.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Michael?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Thane?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
And Shelley, aye. So we will be returning beginning Monday to distance learning.
Can I ask one more thing to Jane's point about returning potentially in distance learning the week after? Would the board feel comfortable allowing that decision to be made by staff and administration, because it'll likely come over the Christmas break for that week? Or would you prefer to have a special meeting held that week between Christmas and New Year's to make that decision?
I think we're on a good track of doing this in public environments with allowing the commentary, and I think we should continue with it.
I think I would be okay with staff making the determination, as long as checking in with the board ahead of time. If there's a reason to move to a public meeting, I think that would be warranted. But I feel like we'll be looking at the same things as we have discussed here, that we have discussed them publicly.
I can make myself available if we need to, I think. I do think there is some value, even if the numbers aren't changing, to having a public conversation, just so everybody hears what's going on. But I mean, with the proviso that if you can't pull the board together, then you have to do what you have to do.
Thane, I don't think you have to weigh in on this one.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Although, in listening to the conversation you were having before about, families maximizing the time away, I don't see that as an entirely bad thing. I think if they're racing to get back to Ojai, through airports at New Year's, that could be more dangerous than doing it a week afterwards. So, I wouldn't even have a problem, making a decision right now to go out that extra week. If we're not going to have school anyway, who cares where families are? If they've already gone somewhere, I don't see that there's an increased risk of them contracting the virus where they are versus coming back. But yeah, having said that, I don't feel like I need to weigh in.
I'll just add, I don't think a whole lot of people are traveling these days. I mean, I just don't. I don't think that the majority of our kids in our district are spending a lot of time on vacations for Christmas.
I would have thought that, Kevin, but for Thanksgiving, there was a lot of travel. And I know we have actually many employees that are traveling over Christmas break.
Yes.
I thought the same thing, but it it's not been the case. And I just, based on vacation requests, I don't think is the case.
I agree. I think even, even families that are just going to LA and Palm Springs and Northern California, I mean, they're definitely gathering with multiple households, and that's my concern.
So I'm not sure we actually got to a consensus about bringing this back to the board at the end of December, or whether it should be a staff decision. It felt very split, kind of right down the middle. Are we available to have a board meeting? Are our board members available at that time at the end of December?
I'm available.
Available.
I'm not going anywhere.
All right.
I would also like to clarify that our SDC students who are on campus right now will be in distance learning. I had elementary in Chaparral, but our SDC students also will be in distance learning for 2 weeks.
Thank you. I was wondering about that.
Before the meeting, I thought of it, but then I got distracted.
So it sounds like we've come to a conclusion. Is there anything else that needs to be?
See you all on the 14th.
Excuse me, we have a motion and a second, but we don't have a roll call vote yet.
Oh, did we not?
Did I miss it?
I thought we did a roll call vote. We can do it again. So we have a motion from Jane and a second from Thane. Yeah?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. All in favor? Michael?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Thane?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
And Shelley, aye. So it passes unanimously. We will be in distance learning through December.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Chuck,
Thank
it
you.
looks like you wanted to say something before we adjourn.
Yes, I do. My question is about nutrition, with these kids being home more so, and then nutrition's done a great job. But I've watched other districts and the numbers aren't close to what was happening when the kids were in school. And because of this time and because of the holidays and because of the finances, this is just going to emphasize nutrition more. So I just wanted to put that on the table.
And yeah, go ahead, Tiffany.
No, I was just saying that is true, and we will continue with our meal distribution program as is happening currently. There's no plans to change that or modify that.
So we will still be serving meals to students through the week.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That adjourns
Great.
this emergency meeting. I appreciate
Thank
you all.
you. Stay healthy.